person to let the dog go. Rocky, come. Yeah. So you saw the dog fighting, and then gets released. The dog's like, ah, and then you see the drive come up and the dog. Hey guys, so this is a continuation from last video. We spoke about recall, and I'm going to show you how I normally start recall with a young puppy. As you can see, Rocket's been in a few of the other videos. She's a 4-month-old Doberman puppy. See, she hasn't had really much structure. At this age, I let him, as I said, explore and do things because now is not really the time that I want to be too hard on the dog and give the dog too many corrections. At this stage, it's all about bonding with the dog and actually letting the dog understand that being around you is fun. So even starting with the recall, I don't like to do any formal recall. I don't like to put a leash on the dog when I'm training for recall at the start, and I won't give it any command. I just show that the dog that it's good to be around me and good things happen when the dog's near me. And that's normally how I start imprinting the recall, by making the place around me really special. So as you can see, she's a little bit distracted. She's doing, you know, running around. And this is a really good opportunity for the dog to learn to come and engage with me on her own. Yeah. So what I like to do is I don't like to show the dog that I have food. I'm not begging the dog for attention. I just exist, and then obviously once I reward once or twice, the dog will start to put 2 and 2 together. So whenever the dog just seeks my attention and comes near me, I just mark and I reward that behavior. And then slowly what you're going to start to notice is the dog will start to, the circle, the radius where the dog likes to explore will start becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. And after I keep rewarding that, the dog sort of starts to understand the concept. As I said, see the radius has just gotten shorter. Yeah. And then I just keep working on that. I let it get distracted, sniff, but I never initiate it. Dog always comes to me, and look, I didn't even ask for that. Yeah. So the dog initiates everything. I'm giving power to the dog. Dog thinks it's making things happen. And this is what I was talking about when I said a reactive dog versus proactive. Reactive dog is I give it the command. Yeah. I give it the command. It does it. Proactive dog is like this. She's doing her own thing and she seeks me out. She's essentially recalling herself. And that's the strongest kind of behavior. You don't need to do any correction. You don't need to do any of those things with a puppy at this age. You let them explore, and then they choose to come to you and interact with you. And once they do that, then you reward and mark. Yeah. And as I said, that creates a proactive dog. And we're just creating the foundations here for a nice recall, even under distractions. Because guess what? I'm not forcing the dog to come to me. She's making that decision, say, hey, something there, but it's more fun to be with dad. And I let her figure it out. It might take 10 minutes, it might take 20 minutes for her to come back to me. Obviously, depending on what kind of work you've done, as I said, I always hand feed her. So she already is a little bit more advanced. But normally, as I said, you just let them explore things at their own pace. And if you've got a dog that's a little bit more, let's say, stubborn, or I wouldn't even say stubborn, but a little bit more wants to explore and doesn't want to be with you, I would really make sure that if you're not hand feeding them, I would start hand feeding them, and then I would start in a less distracting environment. Something like this is very high value. There's animals around, open spaces. So I would start in a small room where the dog really has no other option. They will get bored and then they'll come back to you. Once you do that, then you do the same thing that I'm doing. You reward the dog for that behavior. And then once you've got that solid, you just slowly add more distractions and more distractions. And then eventually, once you're a little bit confident, you can start putting a name to that. You can say, oh, Rocket come, or you know, depending on what you want your recall to be. Depending what you want your recall command to be, then you can start doing that. But only start using a formal command, when you can enforce that command. So you should never ever use a recall if you're not confident your dog's not going to recall. That's the number one rule, because the more you use the command and you don't enforce it, whether it's positively or negatively, when you're teaching it, the weaker it's going to become. So never give a dog a formal command if you know you can't enforce it, if the dog decides not to follow through. So once you're confident with that and you've created that foundation, then you can start saying, Rocket, come. Then you can start saying that, because once you're confident the dog will do it, and you give the dog a little bit of handler help, which is you start moving away from the dog, which creates a little bit of that prey drive as well. And the dog naturally wants to chase you. So when you're recalling, never move towards the dog, because when you move towards the dog will obviously move away, and that's not the point of a recall. You want the dog to come to you. So when you're recalling the dog, always move away from the dog, never chase the dog. You know, a lot of people make that mistake, they chase the dog. If you're at that stage, you've already made a mistake where if you're having to chase the dog, because as I said, that means you haven't really thought it out and you haven't found a way to reinforce that, whether it's positively or negatively. So always when you give a command, always have a way of keeping the dog accountable. Accountability is the number one thing when it comes to recall. If the dog wants to down, you give it a down command or a sit command and it doesn't sit, it's not going to be the end of its life. But if you're recalling the dog wants to run on the road or wants to do something that's not really productive or dangerous, recall is the most important thing you can have for your dog. So a recall is a non-negotiable. I call that a non-negotiable. If you say come to the dog or you recall the dog has to do it. It's not a choice, because it could be a life or death situation. It could be something like that. So whenever I teach a recall, I start it this is the behaviors that I want to see. I start it like this: no leash, no nothing, and I let the dog work at its own pace. And when you do that, when you're recalling, chances are if you have to recall your dog, it means it's not on a leash, right? So why would you start teaching it with a leash? Because when you're recalling the dog, if you've got a leash, you can just bring him back. So it wouldn't make sense to actually put the foundation with a leash. Once you've a bit more advanced, then you can start putting long lines on and do things like that. But at this stage with a puppy, that's how you want to start your recall. So the next stage, once the dog in an environment decides to engage with you, the next stage is to reinforce that behavior and make it stronger. And how you reinforce that behavior and make it stronger is by adding resistance. And what I mean by resistance is the dog wants to come to me, and then now I'm going to say, hang on a minute, you want to come to me, but no, you can't. So a lot of people make that mistake that they force the dog, but you want to do the opposite. So if the dog really wants to come to me and recall, I say, no, you can't. And I get somebody to hold it back, and I really get the dog angry, really frustrated, like, oh, I want to go to dad, and then the dog, that builds that resistance. And when the dog can fight that resistance and fight through the pressure to get to me, it makes the behavior stronger. So what I normally do, you'll need a second person for this. I put a collar on the dog, and then I get them to hold the dog back, and then I move away from the dog. And once the dog shows commitment, whether it's barking or a little bit of lunging, I get the person to let the dog go. Rocky, come. Yeah. So you saw the dog fighting, and then gets released. The dog's like, and then you see the drive come up, and the dog really wants to be with you. and wants to really engage with you, right? So I would do this a couple times. I'll bring the dog back, because now once you start doing this, you'll start to notice the dog becomes glued to you and wants to know what every move that you're doing is. So I lead the dog back. You need to be really careful though that you don't flatten the dog. So when the dog's showing the arousal you want, don't hold it back and expect full-on barking, going crazy. At the start, just a little lunge or even a little sign of them trying to fight that pressure should be enough to let go. Then slowly you can build it up, then you can really get the dog going crazy. And once you make the dog fight to do things, as I said, that's what makes the behavior stronger. Rocky, come! Oh, yeah. Good girl. Oy. Good girl. And then another thing is, on the side note, if you're finding that your dog's not really this food driven or not interested in the food, make your reward delivery a little bit more fun. If you notice, I like to get it chasing, ooh, missing a couple times, then get it. That way it's fun. It's not just boring, it's transactional. Oh, here, boom, and then over time the dog's like, do I really want to do this? You want to make it fun and entertaining, because at this age, all these puppies want to do is chase and bite things. So you want to tap into that and yeah, whoa, really bring their drive up and reward that. So that's the next stage of my recall training, is adding a little bit of resistance. And once the dog wants to really be with you, you make him fight to be with you. So then we'll continue this a little bit further. We'll get a little bit more in depth, but for now, those are the two things that I do, and then I'll show you the next step. Another thing to really pay attention with is also, what I like to do is I like to pair my recall with like a sit or a down, because it's not enough that the dog comes to me, but the dog needs to come and then sit, or whatever that behavior is you want them to do, because sometimes in situations it's not enough that the dog's just near you. You need to have control of your dog, whether you want to put a leash on or you want to do a few different, you want to do a few different things. So yeah, what I would do now is I would obviously don't do this all in one day. You need to build this behavior up. I'm just showing you this for the sake of the video. Next thing I would do is I would probably move a little bit further away from the dog. Ooh, here, sit, yeah. Oh. Then I would get them to come in and then add a little bit more. Every time you want to add a little bit more, whether it's a little bit more barking, a little bit more enthusiasm, you just want to, each rep, you just want to improve something. Yeah. Then I would, get the dog to sit with me. And if you really want to make that sit a lot more snappy, what you can do is, yeah. You want to move real quickly, and obviously once they get a little bit more coordinated, when you make your movements snappy, the dog's movements become snappy. So don't expect everything from a puppy at this age. Just even showing this sort of engagement and attention might be where you're at and might be what stage you're at. Don't try to push too far, because when you start pushing too far, too fast, the dog hasn't got the proper foundation yet and he doesn't really understand everything. So make sure you really concrete each step in before you move to the next stage. So, but at this stage, that's all I would really be doing, because you shouldn't be in a position where your dog, a puppy this age, is really out of your control and requires a recall. Most of the time, a puppy this age should always be on a leash or should always be under your supervision. So I wouldn't really get into the stage where I take him somewhere, have him off leash and I start recalling. I'll just build the foundation up as I showed you. Then once they get into the 5-6 months age where they're becoming teenagers and you've set the proper foundation, once you've set the proper foundation, then I'll make another video with our other pups on how to progress from this. But if you do this consistently, you're gonna make everything a breeze for yourself later on, because you've introduced it in a positive way and the dog is trying to be with you. You're not forcing the dog to be with you. So the dog's actively making that choice. So then it's really easy for them to make that choice later on when there's distractions, and you add a little bit of positive and negative reinforcement, and you give the dog the complete picture. You make it really, really easy for the dog to make the right decision all the time. So I'll leave it off at that. And if you guys really enjoyed this video, or you'd like me to make more content on other things in terms of obedience, like how to teach a dog how to heel, do all these other obedience exercises, let me know. Leave it in the comments. Like this video and share, and catch you on the next one. Yeah, good, yeah.